Hi, everybody. This is Haulin Goatcher, calling from New Orleans, Louisiana. This is Ride by Day, Wrench by Night, presented by Vintagejetski.
Here we are, the first episode of Ride by Day, Wrench by Night. How exciting. It's a new podcast for all those that love old school jet skis. My name is Cam Wise, and over the course of the series, we're going to be speaking to some of the biggest names in the sport from the 80s and 90s as well as today. These are the people that make our community so great. So if you're looking to hear what it was like to be back in the glory days of jet ski racing, then we have the perfect guest to kick it all off and bring a smile to your face. He's a rider who began his career at the ripe age of just 17 years old. He made his professional debut for L&S Engineering in '89 and went on to carve out a career of more than 100 races in the Pro Mod class, also riding for the likes of R&R JetTech and Westcoast Performance, for whom he claimed a podium in the 1990 World Finals in Havasu. I'm talking about none other than Haulin Goatcher. Tune in and you'll hear great insights into what it was like to be up against a number of other legends of the era, including Victor Sheldon, Larry Rippenkruger, Chris Fischetti, and of course, 10 times world champion Jeff Jacobs. In fact, Harry has so many interesting stories to tell that we'll be bringing you this interview over 2 episodes. So settle in and enjoy. The first question, Harry, is how did you get into jet ski racing?
Yeah, right. So all we really have is a lake, even though it's a large lake. It's Lake Mead. And my stepdaddy that raised me, Bill Goatcher, he was a country boy from Oklahoma. And, I've always been a sports guy, baseball, football, state championship in baseball. And his buddy, Ray Phoebus, had this little yellow thing on the back of his truck and said he was going to go to the lake. And it looked pretty cool. And I was 13 and got out there and jumped on this thing. And of course, I was a kid and it was just awesome to be on the water doing something fun. It had a motor to it. I never thought in my wildest dreams that Bill would even enjoy it because he was kind of a, Oklahoma farm boy and out of shape. And man, he took one ride on it and came back and looked at my mama and said, "What color?" So, "What do you mean? What color?" She said, "What color do you want?" And, Bill didn't have a lot of money. He was operating engineer, middle class, and hell, he bought us a red one.
Wow.
And the way it all worked out, yeah, so his friends were all operating engineers, and they all bought motorhomes and their kids and a couple of jet skis, and they just went out there, Cameron, to pass a good time and, enjoy the weekend. They work hard. They wanted to go out there and campfire, and the kids play on the toys. That's exactly how the whole thing went down. And then apparently I started doing headstands, and I was 14 years old, and I was doing a bunch of tricks. And I guess Bill said, "Hey, maybe this boy's got some talent."
Absolutely. What a great way to grow up.
Yeah, he decided to take me to California on some races, and we started doing pretty well, Cam.
That's awesome. And how did you find out about your first race? And tell us about how you got into racing. Did you modify your ski, or was it completely stock, or what happened then?
That's a great question. Well, the ski was completely stock, and that was a stock 550. Bill bought Mama a 440, a little slower thing. Well, then come to the races, we learned to find out that the 440 put a pipe and a few modifications on it would make it a super stock. So that's when Bill started to get into his credit card a little bit. So he recruited one of my best friends, ever, Todd Kutcher, who was older than me, but he knew how to work on stuff. And he took me under his wing as far as putting some modifications into the jet skis. So I had a stock and I had a super stock. And Bill took me around California, and we proceeded to do pretty well. I would like to rewind back to a pretty good story about the modifications and my progress to the pro class. Okay, so once Bill started putting these pipes and modifications and travel expenses, and it obviously costs money. And this is a lot of extra money that Bill didn't have. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But he did it because, God rest his soul, he saw talent. He saw talent in me. So we jumped on Todd wanted me to ride his modified that he had professionally modified by Rec World out of Las Vegas. That's another story coming up. So we were going into the World Championships with a super stock, a stock, and a modified jet ski that all were pretty doggone competitive. Okay. So we were headed to the championships. I was riding the expert class, and Bill was a very straightforward man. And I want to say for the record, Bill was not a rich man.
Yeah.
And he flat out told me the way the cow is going to eat the cabbage. He said, Harry, I don't have a lot of money. He said, and I'm taking you to the world championships as far as I can take you, boy. He said, so I hope you do well. And we won almost everything.
Wow. What a good way to repay him for his investment in you, his belief.
We really did. Yeah, we won just about everything. Of course, we didn't win the mod class because Jeff was involved, but I won everything else. Yeah. I won everything else except the mod class. And
what year was this?
Oh man, 86.
Right. Really early days.
Yeah, 86. I was 16. And right after the end of that race, we didn't even pack up the skis yet. Then an older man walked up to me and offered me a pro ride. His name was Ed Lazinski.
Oh, wow.
And that was L&S Engineering. Steve Strickland and Ed Lazinski. And so Bill told me going into Havasu, he can't afford it. And coming out of Havasu, he never had to spend another penny.
Oh, that's a great story. So can you rattle off some of the main upgrades? So you had a bone stock ski, you'd come in, you'd fire it up, you'd run it in or whatever, and then you'd put a ride plate, an intake grate, an impeller. You tell me what you would do to it.
All right, so you had to be very careful in the stock class. You couldn't do a whole lot more, and forgive me if I'm not exactly correct, but yeah, you can put a ride plate on it. I don't think you can put an impeller on it. You can put handlebars on it, but it had to be pretty doggone stock.
Yeah.
The stock class is a very questionable class.
Open to interpretation.
Right. Well, I'm just going to be that interpretation. NASCAR has one saying that you want to win bad enough, you're going to tweak the rules.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, but a lot of people did what they had to do to work on heads and work on gaskets and kind of tweak. Okay, so let's move on. So from the stock class, you really couldn't do too much.
Yeah.
Now, the super stock class was the 440, and that was pretty highly modified as far as you can do carburation, you can do a pipe, you can do an impeller, you can do ride plates, and you could do impellers.
Right, but you couldn't change the compression, or could you shave the head?
You could shave the head, but I really don't think you can open the boring.
Yeah.
And before you even get any further with engine schematics, I want everyone to know that I was not the mechanic as far as if you want engine sports and specs, and I just wasn't that guy. I mean, not that I couldn't take my pipes off, but and I got to just jump ahead. The very short, brief amount of wonderful time with Bill Chapin, he just told me one thing. He said, I think I said something to him. I said, man, but I don't want to hurt the engine, Bill. I don't want to hurt it. And he looked at it, he said the coolest thing. He said, you go out there and break it. He said, you worry about that. He said, you worry about that handlebars and winning the race. The rest is my job.
That's a great bit of advice from him. So you can just go out there and let it all hang out.
Exactly. He's like, wow. I was like, God, I wish I had this guy in my corner, but he was obligated elsewhere.
Because back in the day, I guess you'd be really nursing skis so you didn't break them, so you could get to the next race, or, it cost you money, so you're thinking about it.
Oh, I was so hoping that this subject and time frame would come up. So here we are. Now listen to this. So I turned pro at 17, and I'm on top of the world. You can imagine. I mean, L&S was just a beautifully painted yellow skis. I had support, and it was the highlight of any young athlete's life, right? Okay, now check this out. My very, very first race was in Monterey, California. Not many people remember it. Now, that's Northern California, okay?
Okay.
Northern California has brutal surf. Brutal. It was a surf race. Cameron, it gets way worse. Now I'm from a lake. Dog, I ride on a lake.
Nice and flat, calm.
Okay. This was 6 to 7 foot, give or take, and it was a shore break. 1, 2, 3. It was close out to where it would come and it would make its curve, and it looked like you can make it over it. Okay, and then it would just boom. Okay, this race was brutal. Oh, people were just being drug off of this thing. Me, I was carried. I almost drowned and was carried to the shore. Okay, now here's the funny part. So Larry Rippenkroger, that's an entirely other subject as far as he just did everything for the sport. So he was my legend, of course, and my idol. So I'm finally racing against Larry Rippenkroger. So here we are. We both make it past the break and we're going down this long turn. Now, a two-stroke, when you come out of the water, you got to let off the gas because you'll blow it up.
Yep.
It's so you gotta feather the throttle.
Yeah.
My adrenaline was going so fast, I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I was next to Larry Rippenkroger, and I was trying my best to win. I blew up 3 skis that day.
Jeez, that's not cheap.
I almost drowned, and I blew up 3 of them. I had no idea what to do in the surf.
Oh, man. When you blew up those 3 skis, were they being rebuilt, basically on the shoreline? Or did you have spare skis? How did it work?
No, we didn't have any kind of support like that. All we had 2 of them. I remember they were both yellow. One was the modified, one was just super stock. I blew both them up. And then we borrowed one and I blew it up too. But that was my lack of knowledge on how to ride the surf. Riding the surf is a completely different animal. That's where surfers, like Chris Fischetti, and that's a wonderful subject there, one of my best friends in the whole world, just excels in the surf. I mean, to see Chris Fischetti ride a jet ski in the surf, he is not riding it. He's just playing with it. It's amazing. Now, I do want to come to a point in my career on the surf riding, and it comes to Australia. It's Richard Payne in Cronulla, New South Wales.
Just down the road from me.
He was another. Yeah, he was one of the riders for L&S Engineering. And if I'm not mistaken, Richard won. Now, and I might be, but he was just so skilled in the surf and he knew how to ride it that I'll tell you this, that off season, I went to compete in Australia. I stayed with Richard. I rode every day in the surf outside of his house, and I came back a jet ski surf rider and won many surf races after that.
That's right, because you've got a bit of history over here, don't you?
Yes, I've got a lot of history in Australia. A lot of good, almost all good, even though I broke my neck over there.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that. We'll touch on that later, yeah.
Yeah, we'll touch on that. So we was at my first pro year at L&S Engineering, Cameron, if I remember. That's where we were right now. We had a competitive year. I was a young kid, 17. I think we did the number 5 plate.
How did that season go?
I didn't know a whole lot. I'm 17 years old, and I'm out there. We left the house. Me and my buddy Eric Byington. He was an expert rider. Both of our dads are best friends. They said, "Boy, our boys got some talent." They bought us a trailer and flipped us a couple credit cards and said, "There's the highway."
Wow, let them loose.
Let them loose. That's a big world out there. So I guess getting number 5. I learned a lot about life, and we made it and made a little bit of money, and he did good in the expert, and I did pretty good. In the pros. We were competitive. The highlight of that year was coming back for the World Championships in Lake Havasu that year, and Ed Lazinski is an absolute wizard with his motor. Now, I'll tell you something, since, I think that's what we're doing is talking stories.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Not many people know this. Ed Lazinski's intake ports were so big that the motor wouldn't start. No, they wouldn't start without starting fluid. The holder had to have starting fluid on the line. As soon as we opened it up, he'd have to kick it with the ether, and then the motor would take over. And that's just how hopped up the thing was and the way he had it designed. But when Ed was there, that thing ran like a top. So I whole shot at Pro Mod at 17 and led the whole thing for 13 laps, 14 laps with David Gordon right on my butt until the jet ski went down to one cylinder.
Ah, damn.
And electrode had burned off of one of the spark plugs, and we limped in at a number 3. But I spoke with Mr. Lazinski and Steve Strickland a few years after that race, and for a mom and pop shop like that, that was the highlight of their career. It really was. So I was delighted to be a part of that.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Lake Havasu at the World Finals was like? The atmosphere, the people, the colors, the girls, because it looks pretty amazing, the photos and the footage that, most of us would have seen.
Oh boy, girls. Gosh, where to start, right? It was our finest equipment. It was our finest hour. We were in our limelight, and the whole world was watching. And to see the crowds, we would go to Long Beach, we'd go to New York, we'd go to Florida, be a lot of people on the beach. At the height of our career and jet ski career, we'd signed a ton of autographs, and our sponsors supported us so much. Jet Pilot, of course, and R&R and Scat Track. I'm not going to start rattling off like I'm in some victory speech right now, but you know how riders do that. I want to thank everybody. But when we'd signed a ton of autographs, and we had large crowds. Okay, but man, when you went to Havasu, it's almost like I'm a very humble man, but it was like, man, why is all these people coming after me? What do they want from me? What is going on? But it was just so many people, and ESPN was so prominent.
Yeah, ESPN. There's so many magazines. There was Splash, Jet Sports. There's so much going on.
And that L&S Engineering ski, I was fortunate to be the very first cover shot for Splash magazine. It was a picture of me doing a left-handed leg drag on an L&S jet ski. That was the first one.
That's a very famous shot.
Yeah, it truly is. Now I guess I got my finger on the throttle as far as this interview goes. So now you've got me thinking what my next step was, right? So L&S Engineering had petered out. We weren't going to go any further. I'll just freaking be honest with you. Bill and Ed Lazinski got into it over cost of repairing some jet skis or something. And Bill said, to hell with them. I'm not paying for it. I told you, Bill wasn't a rich guy. It was over me blowing up 3 ski. And it was like, all right, season's done. You got to pay for it. Bill's like, man, I ain't paying you shit, man. So I was very much involved with Jet Pilot. Jet Pilot was my number one. They always have been. Phil Johnson, Scott Burnsworth, and Eric Baker. But, Phil was the mastermind behind everything. So, Phil had pulled me into his office, and we're in Carlsbad, California, photo shooting or whatever. And I didn't have a ride. They had teamed up Jet Pilot with Scott Watkins, who was the freestyle guru time when Scott was just coming up. And Scott was because he's from Hollywood, Florida. Scott was with R&R JetTech. They seen yet because they were just kind of low level, helping Scott out a little bit because he's so talented. All right, so Phil calls me into his office and he says, how about R&R JetTech? And I'm like, who? I go, Scott Watkins is Little People. But I'd had no idea anything about R&R, but they hadn't broken into anything. So it wasn't like me saying they hadn't done anything in the industry.
Right, so you're not aware of them.
Yeah, I'm not aware of them. I wasn't, with no disrespect, of course, I just wasn't. Nobody was. The only reason Phil knew about him was because of Scott. But they wanted to break in and go hardcore racing. So Phil immediately gets me on the phone, gets Ray Basha. is Ray and Robert Basha, R&R. He gets Ray on the phone and he proposes break into the jet ski market. What Harry Goatcher number 5 in the world? Man, Ray jumped on it like a dog on meat. Ray was so nice, and he goes, dude, I'm going to build you 2 custom jet skis. Okay, so I'm going to say one thing and jump back. So I said, yeah. Dude, little did I know how serious he was. Okay? Now, I'm going to give y'all some background that a lot of people don't know. Ray and Robert Basha, Robert is the businessman.
Yeah.
Now, Ray was a businessman too, but Ray was the mastermind with engines. Ray was 100% self-taught everything. This guy was like a genius.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, bro. He was. Now, those guys were from Damascus, Syria. And when they came over, they had to do everything on their own. They came up all on their own. But man, when I got to R&R, this place was big. And it was gorgeous. You want to talk about top notch. I was like, okay, daddy's home. Holy crap, look at this place. That's where the mills, the lathes, all of his tools were. And this thing was like an operating room because I'm talking about the floors were white, polished, waxed. I mean, if you dropped a black hair on the ground, you would see it. And that's the way Ray was.
Yep.
And he had a guy that did his milling, and they did a great job with the paint jobs. So here's the deal. Ray needed a head start. Apparently, these engine builders need to know which way the ports are going to go, kind of give them a starting point. So we knew going into the 88 season that we could do decent in the super stock, but in the modifieds we were gonna have trouble. So I'm from Las Vegas, and Rec World is there. Dave Newman, who's another great story. He's been on the cutting edge of stuff. He was David Gordon's mechanist, and fast forwarding, he was Westcoast. So I contacted Dave to help R&R put Rec World on the boat, and Dave would build the motor. So Dave did exactly that, and we didn't do bad in the modified class, but once again, we were all trying to compete with Jeff, having no luck. Okay, because he was just that good.
Is this the one with the rainbow colors?
No, not this. The year before. This was the green.
Oh, the green, right.
These were the green ones.
Gotcha. That's all right. I'm just trying to paint the picture.
Okay, so I was so proud of him, and Ray was so serious. Oh, he also did something that I never seen before. The painter who I got to give those to is RJR. That's the man that painted the green and the candy stripe boats. All right, he was amazing. But he painted the inside, the bottom where the engine is, the inside, the bottom deck in white Emerald epoxy. So any oil leak that came, any gasoline that came, you would just wipe it up. Okay. So me not knowing nothing about engines, like if there was a leak coming out of one of the jets or something, I had no idea how to fix it. But I'll tell you what, brother, I knew how to clean.
Yep.
So I cleaned everything to where if there was a leak, something anywhere, I could call Ray and say, got a problem right here. So the next year, when we went into the candy stripe boats, he had told me personally, I said, Ray, I can't believe what you're doing. He said, Harry, if you wouldn't have taken care of those jet skis the way you did, I would have never done this. He said, but I know you're gonna take care of them. So that leads us into the candy stripe year, which it was one of our strongest years. I mean, now that I look at the pictures, it was one of the heights of the jet ski industry.
Oh, they were beautiful skis.
Jet Pilot had the wetsuits popping. Serrano and Troy Lee, Neil Ski, everybody had the helmets popping. It was just a lovely sight.
Serrano's still putting out some amazing looking skis.
People that are talented like that and have that name that they so rightfully deserve, and are still willing to work for it. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't do what they're passionate and make a wonderful income doing it. You know, he's earned it. So, that was an awesome year. We got real close to Jeff a lot of times. We did decent in points, I think 3 or 4. And I'm going to tell you what, at the end of that 89 season. I didn't think we were going to get this in depth, Cameron.
Oh, this is
but
great. Bring
this
memory
is what
lane.
it's all about. Good. So I don't talk about this stuff. You could ask, and not right now because something's changed in my life to where I've found that if I show pictures of what I did, it brings them joy. It brings them joy. I didn't know that for a long time. So I would go 5, 6, 7, 8 years working side by side next to someone and never say a word. I believe that being humble is a good trait.
That's true, but then again, there's another side of it to sharing your experiences, which we're doing now, because there's so many people out there that know your name, that know your exploits, that are in so much appreciation for what you did for the sport, as well as super impressed with how you handled yourself, how hard you raced, and you guys, Victor, Jeff, Fischetti, all the boys. They made it so good. And then the girls as well. It was just such a good era. You'd be almost robbing people of the chance to learn more about it if we don't have these discussions. So it's so good to have you back in the scene.
Thank you so much for saying that. And it's the darndest thing because, when I retired, I'm like a horse. I was like a horse in the stables with the blinders on. Okay, I'm going to do this as hard as I can. And then, okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to go this way. And, I've always been a professional painter, and I went ahead and attacked that industry and did well, did this and did that. And then I guess I'll make everybody laugh. I'm old. I'm 50.
Nah, you're not old.
I mean, I'm in the prime of my life. I feel wonderful. But I'm talking about technology. I'm one of those guys that that I was kicking and screaming and still had my flip phone. And I just saw all these kids on their phone talking about this Facebook thing and this wallpaper and this friend. And I really turned my nose up at it for 15 years at least. And I was just like, I don't want to be one of those people that are stuck on the phone because I'm still highly active and I want to be outside. Like right now, I'm outside, and Cameron, I ride my bike every day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Either way. So it was one of those. What had finally happened was my sister had said, look, if you wanted to talk to anybody, who would it be? And just right off the dump, I said, my good mate in Australia, Matt Manning. And she said, hold on a minute. And within 45 seconds, hello, Matt, mate, how you going? It was, Cameron, it was on from that point as far as reconnecting, because so once I'd put my name on the page, and dude, this has only been 6 months ago.
So
8 months ago tops.
So let's just recover that. So your sister said, who do you want to get in contact with? And then she's jumped onto Facebook, found Matt was on there. She's sent him a message, and then somehow, and then you guys she's got on the call and said, hey, Matt, I've got Harry on the phone, put it onto you. And then you're like, whoa.
That's exactly.
Mind blown.
I was like, what? And it was just like I'm speaking to you. And I'm like, no way. It really works like that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We live in a small world these days.
So what had happened then was, then I reached out to some other real dear friends in Florida. Neil Bowman, who's Neilski, painter, friend, extraordinary person, and Bubba, one of my mechanics. Great guy, had a lot of great times, done a lot of good things with Bubba. And he's in Florida. So I reached out to them first after Matt. They both was just about fell down in their chair. And we started reminiscing about old times and maybe you should get in touch with this person and that person. So then my Facebook started, I was like, wow, look at all these people. So check this out. So having talked to so many different people, and I don't even want to start by names. I did speak with Victor, message Chris. I just talked to Jeff's mama, Miss Karen, who's an awesome woman.
Yep.
Yeah, and we reminisce about these times, okay? And not only the racers, but the people that were involved in our life. The people that traveled with us, like my buddy Fast Eddie was there. Now he's a multimillionaire in Laguna. This is amazing, Cameron. This is what I feel in my heart. I don't care what anybody that I've spoken to is doing right now. We're all successful at, whatever we do and whatever endeavors. For some reason, those seem to be the greatest times of our life.
Definitely the glory days of the sport, that's for sure.
And it really came back to that. It was the glory days of the sport. And those were just some awesome times in our life. And through the people reaching out, to me saying hi and, thanks that I'm doing good. And, just saying wonderful things about me that I really just maybe took advantage of. I always just tried to be a nice person to everyone. But the word is I'm extremely grateful and I'm humbled, by the outpouring of people. So I'm more than happy to be working with you, Cameron, and Vintagejetski and doing this interview. And I hope a lot of people hear it and maybe it brings them some joy.
I'm sure it will, Harry. And thank you, because I'm stoked to catch up with a hero of mine, and I'm sure many people would see the same way. It's really cool to be able to still have that connection and actually talk to you on the other side of the world of someone that we all look up to. We've all got pictures. We replay videos of you racing on ESPN on YouTube all the time, and it's discussion point on Facebook posts, so it's really cool that people can still have this connection with you. So we're all grateful.
And once I spoke with Bubba and Neil and Matt, they all told me right off the jump to get in touch with Vintagejetski. Every single one of them said, these people have got a passion for the old school stuff. And here I am thinking, I'm thinking whatever. Like, how much could you really do with a bunch of memories?
Yeah.
That was kind of my first thought. For real. But then I'm seeing like, man, there's still people, riding old school stuff. Matt Manning right now is having a Westcoast ski restored.
Oh, mate.
A replica of my number 5. I hear there's all kind of stuff happening.
There's so much happening. It's a massive resurgence. I guess it's like, people restore classic cars or muscle cars or vintage motorcycles. And that's what's happening now with jet skis, because people are looking at it and going, I want something that's a replica of the ski that I used to really want when I was a kid. Or they make these custom builds with every bit of performance part they can. And then there's all these other companies like Pro Watercraft Racing and so many others out there that make handling products to make them a little bit easier and also aggressive to ride. So you're bringing more people into the sport. Yeah, it's fantastic.
You and I had a wonderful discussion. We've had several, by the way. All of them have been. And we kind of touched on, I think I want to jump into this. I don't want to say the rise and the fall of the sport. Okay. And having said that, all we were trying to do, and I'm going to jump, you know me already, Cameron, I'm going to jump into this. All we were trying to do was, you know what I'm going to say?
Yeah, I know.
all we were trying to do was beat Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay. He was that good. And I'm not even going to get into what I have to say about Jeff, because I want to say this. We didn't know that was the end. I didn't know. You know what I mean? I didn't know that it was plateaued, dude. I mean, at that point.
So this is 92, 93, or a little bit later?
Yeah. And before that, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. It was on ESPN. It was Pro Motocross. And then following that, and the next day in the same channel was Pro Jetski and Stand Up.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn big. But see, so I didn't know. Who could have predicted? It's like the doggone coronavirus, right? Who could have predicted that? So what had happened, in my opinion, is here come the sit downs. Now, they were forced upon us because, any people that got money, they're not going to buy a $6,000 jet ski that it takes a kid to ride. They can't pull their fat ass up on that thing. They want to sit down with a cooler, and go cruising around. So that's where the market is. Okay. So here's the thing. Jeff Jacobs could start with a dead engine and win the race.
Yep. He's pretty phenomenal.
Victor could have done the same. Yeah, because there's talent involved. There's a lot of horsepower, but there's talent. You can pick around the turns. You can finesse it. You could scope riders out, just like Pro Motocross right now. It's the same thing as Pro Jetski was back then. Now, when you put a sit down in the race, and now it's all sit downs, there's not as much passing. You can't. They're just too big.
It doesn't make it as exciting to watch, does it?
I guess not. I've almost never watched it. I mean, it got to the point to where when the sit downs came in, they made me race them. Yamaha made me race them. I got third in the world in the 1200 class, but I saw where it was going. I wanted to be in stand-ups, but it was dying out. The sit downs, I just didn't want to be a part of it. I don't want to say up in age, 23, 24, but it was just at that time. I said, man, you know what? There's something ain't happening here. If we can't raise stand-ups and sit-downs are coming in, it's time to turn the page. It's time to turn the page on it. That's what we did at that time. But, it was some very exciting times for us.
Yeah. And I guess Kawasaki had jet ski for a number of years. They had the patent. And I think it was about 18 years or 19 years that nothing really changed on them at all until they brought out the 650. And then when Yamaha were able to bring out their version, did you see a big drop-off of the aftermarket companies because then it went to more factory racing? Because there were so many companies that would make aftermarket parts.
Yeah, no, I really didn't, because see, when the factories got involved, that was when it was on the way out. And I'm glad you said that, because when Kawasaki came in with their, I'm going to call it a minor factory with John Stevens, they smoked everybody. But I'm going to tell you something right now, brother. That next year when they put Victor, they made him leave Jet Pilot and go to Slippery When Wet, because that was what Kawasaki's deal was. I'm going to speak for Victor. I guarantee that broke Victor's heart, because Victor bleeds Jet Pilot just like I do. So when he had to leave Jet Pilot, it was for the betterment of the sport. But I'm going to tell you something. When that diesel pulled up for the first time in the sport, oh, it was over. Dude, it was like our jaws dropped. And the way they came out, they brought every avenue, every mechanic. They did not F around. And they put the screws to the sit downs in the runabout on that year with that factory, right? So back to your question of aftermarket parts and that, Cameron, I was at the end of my rope right then. The only kind of 100% factory backing that I saw was that year with Victor Sheldon.
Well, we should probably put the brakes on a little bit and put it in reverse, because we missed out on one of the eras. So we're going from your dad to then L&S to then R&R JetTech. And then what happened then? I believe you went to Westcoast.
Oh, great.
And we're going to leave you hanging right there. What's there not to like about Harry? He's such a legend of a guy, and he had me hanging off every word. We'll be back with the rest of this chat soon, including the full story of how he broke his neck in Australia and some interesting insights into his time with Westcoast Performance. I really hope you enjoy the show, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the Vintagejetski podcast, we're on Apple, Spotify, and all of your favourite podcast apps, and subscribing is the best way to ensure you never miss a beat. In the meantime, if you want to drop us a message about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Vintagejetski, or you can email us at podcast@vintagejetski.com. So until next time, legends, ride by day and wrench by night.